If you had only 1 minute to live, what would you do? It's a question we rarely ask ourselves. A question we push away because, deep down, we all believe death is something that happens to others, never us. We live our lives, thinking we're untouchable, until something happens that changes everything. I know, because it happened to me. I don't believe in life after death. I never did. I used to think the idea was comforting, sure, but just a fairy tale for those who couldn't face the cold, hard truth. The truth is, when you die, that's it. There's nothing. The world keeps spinning, and your place in it is nothing more than a memory that fades away with time. That was the truth I lived by, until I was lying on an operating table, surrounded by the sterile smell of a hospital room, my heart slowing down. His pulse is gone. Those words, they're the last thing I remember hearing before everything went black. I was supposed to be fine. Just a routine procedure. A quick fix, nothing serious. But when the doctors started prepping me, something went terribly wrong. The anesthesia hit me hard, and I felt myself slipping, falling into the darkness. And then, nothing. The next moment, I was floating. Not in the sense that my body was just weightless, but actually rising, moving upward, like a balloon that had escaped its tether. I could feel the cold, the sterile air around me, but it was distant. Faint, like I was no longer a part of it. I wasn't me anymore. I wasn't tied to the body below, lying motionless on the operating table. I wasn't even sure what was happening at first. Was I dreaming? Was this some kind of hallucination? But the more I rose, the clearer it became, I was not in my body anymore. My pulse was gone, my heart had stopped. There was no pain, no struggle. I felt calm. At peace. I looked down, and there it was. My body. Still and lifeless. The doctors were busy, trying to revive me. The beeping of the machines, rapid, frantic. The crash cart, the air thick with tension. But I wasn't there anymore. It was like I was a spectator, watching the scene unfold from a distance. I didn't feel fear. In fact, I didn't feel much of anything. It was as if the moment of death had washed away all the noise, all the worries, all the burdens of my life. In this space, whatever it was, I was free. Then, I saw it. A light. At first, just a small dot in the distance, flickering like the glow of a faraway star. But as I drifted closer, the light grew larger, brighter, until it engulfed me completely. I couldn't look away. I wasn't scared. No, it wasn't fear. It was wonder. There was something about that light, something that felt so right, so pure. I felt drawn to it, like it was calling me. But, as I floated toward it, I realized something. I wasn't just moving through space. I was moving through something else. This wasn't just about traveling upward. It was like crossing into another realm, another dimension, one that I had never known existed. There was no pain. No sense of time. Just pure, unending light and an overwhelming sense of calm. The further I went, the less I could remember of my life. My worries, my regrets, they all faded. In that moment, I understood what peace felt like. But it wasn't just the light that struck me. It was the voices. At first, I couldn't hear them clearly, just whispers, like the faintest echo of something distant. But as I moved closer to the light, the whispers became words. Clear, soothing, like a language I somehow understood. A voice. A presence. You can stay, or you can return. The words didn't scare me. I didn't feel hesitation or fear. I felt peace. But that choice, the choice to stay or return, it hit me. Why was I being given this choice? Why was this happening to me? I can stay. I thought to myself, the thought blooming in my mind. The presence seemed to understand. It wasn't judging me. It wasn't pressuring me. It was simply offering a choice. But a choice like this, between life and death, wasn't one to be taken lightly. As I floated there, I began to question everything I had believed. Everything I had thought I knew about life and death. Was this it? Was this the end of everything? Or was it the beginning of something else? The voice seemed to grow stronger, clearer. The words felt more real. Your time is not yet finished, it said. You may go back, or you may stay here, where all is calm. A surge of warmth washed over me, as if something deep within me was reaching out for that peace, that quiet that the light offered. But then, something else stirred within me. A pull. A tie back to the world I had left behind. The life I had known, my family, my friends, my work, flashed before my eyes, not in a rush, but in vivid detail. There was so much I hadn't done yet. So much I hadn't said. Could I really leave all of that behind? That thought was the last thing I clung to before the light started to fade, and I felt myself being pulled backward. My body, my real body, was calling me back. I could feel it, the tether pulling me, anchoring me to the life I had left behind. And then, the overwhelming sensation of weight returned. The noise, the machines, the cold metal table. I was back. But I wasn't the same. In those moments, lying there on that cold operating table, surrounded by doctors working to bring me back to life, I knew something had changed. Something had shifted within me, something I couldn't put into words. But one thing was clear, I had seen the other side. I had touched something beyond this world. And now, nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I didn't just return to life. I returned with questions. And no answers. The questions weren't about death. They were about everything else. The life I had left behind. The life I still had ahead. And most of all, the truth I had seen beyond the veil, the truth about what happens after we die. But no one would believe me. And that, in itself, was the hardest part. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? There's a strange sensation that comes with the moment you realize you're no longer tied to your body. It's not like floating in water or drifting in a dream, it's more profound, more real, yet somehow weightless. I don't know how long I had been unconscious when I first noticed it. But one moment, I was aware of my body, the cold, sterile surface of the operating table beneath me, and the next. I wasn't. I felt light, but not in the way you might think. My physical body was heavy with the weight of mortality, but my consciousness, my awareness, it was different. It was free. Free from pain, free from the limitations of the body I had left behind. The first thing I noticed was how far I was from my body. I wasn't sure how I could perceive distance, after all, I was no longer in my body. But I could feel it. There was a strange detachment from the physical world, like the lines of space and time no longer applied. The usual heaviness that comes with being alive, the pull of gravity, all that was gone. I wasn't even breathing. And that's when I saw it, the light. It started small, just a flicker in the distance, but as soon as I noticed it, it began to grow. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, a hallucination or an aftereffect of anesthesia. But as I moved closer to it, I realized it wasn't a figment of my mind. It was something real. It wasn't like the harsh, artificial lights of the operating room. No, this light felt alive. It was warm but not overwhelming, like the embrace of a long-lost friend. It shimmered in every direction, not blinding, but illuminating everything around it with a soft, inviting glow. As I drifted toward it, I felt a pull, not unlike the gentle tug of a magnet drawing something to it. It wasn't just that I wanted to go to it, it felt like it was calling me, guiding me, pulling me home. I couldn't explain it, but the moment I entered the glow, I felt something shift inside me, something deep within, as if I had found where I belonged. The fears, the doubts, the chaos of my life, they all melted away. There was no confusion, no anxiety, no rushing thoughts. Everything felt calm. Peaceful. Eternal. There, within that light, I felt whole. I looked back toward the space where my body should have been, but it was distant, fading like a memory. A fleeting glimpse of who I once was, but no longer part of who I was becoming. It felt strange, like I was a part of something much bigger, much more significant, than anything I had ever experienced before. I had no words for it. How could I? The light, the peace, the utter tranquility, it was beyond comprehension, beyond anything I had ever known in life. I felt weightless, not just physically, but emotionally. I wasn't tethered to the things that had weighed me down, guilt, regret, fear of the unknown. All of that had simply dissolved. And then, I heard it. The voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. It was neither male nor female, but something timeless, something that carried a sense of ancient wisdom. It wasn't like hearing with my ears, but something deeper, felt, understood on a level that transcended the senses. You can stay, or you can return. The words echoed in my mind, though they came without judgment, without pressure. There was no urgency in them. No fear. Just a gentle offer, as if I had been invited to choose. I paused. Stay or return. In that moment, I wasn't scared. There was no fear of what was beyond that light, no hesitation in my decision. But I couldn't deny that a part of me wanted to stay. The peace I felt, the freedom, the feeling that I was in the right place, where everything made sense, it was irresistible. But as I lingered there, something else began to stir in me. It wasn't a voice or a force, it was a feeling, a tugging at the very core of my being. It felt like love. It wasn't a romantic love, or the love I had for my family. No, it was something much larger, something universal, a deep, unconditional love that transcended everything I had ever known. It was the kind of love that made you feel connected to everything, to every living thing, to the very heartbeat of existence itself. That's when I felt the pull back. It wasn't as strong as the call of the light, but it was there. I could feel it, the life I had left behind, the people who loved me, the world that still needed me. But still, I hesitated. The voice spoke again, softly, like the whisper of a breeze brushing against my soul. You have more to do. Your time is not yet finished. I didn't know how to interpret those words, but they carried weight. They felt like a reminder, an understanding that, although I felt complete in the light, my journey was not yet over. There was something still waiting for me, something I had yet to fulfill, a purpose that had not been completed. And so, reluctantly, I turned away from the light, the glow fading as I pulled back from it. The sensation of peace, of being whole, didn't leave me entirely, it was still there, lingering in the background like a soft echo, but now I felt a pull towards something else, something unknown. I wasn't sure if I was making the right choice. How could I know? I had only just touched the surface of the peace beyond, only just glimpsed what lay beyond the veil. But I knew I couldn't stay. Not yet. And as I began to drift back, I couldn't help but wonder, what would my life be like after this? What was I meant to do with the knowledge I had gained, the understanding I had touched? But no matter how many questions filled my mind, there was one thing I knew for sure, I was about to return, and nothing would ever be the same again. As I began to descend, I felt the world around me shift. The serenity, the calmness of the light, was replaced by the cold, harsh reality of the operating room. The soft whispers of the beyond were drowned out by the frantic beeping of machines, the hurried voices of doctors trying to resuscitate me. I could feel my body again, feel the weight, the coldness of the table beneath me. But it wasn't just my body I could feel. It was everything. The familiar weight of existence had returned. And with it, the noise of the world, of the life I had left behind. I had made my choice. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my return wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning of something far greater. I woke up to the harsh beeping of a heart monitor and the sterile scent of hospital antiseptic. The cold, unyielding table beneath me felt heavy, pulling me back into the reality I had left moments, or was it hours, ago. I blinked my eyes open, the blurriness of waking from deep unconsciousness blurring my perception of time. I could feel the sharp discomfort of an 4 in my arm, the sticky adhesive on my chest from the EKG leads, and the tightness in my throat. I was back. But I didn't feel the same. I tried to move, but my body felt like a foreign thing. Every muscle felt stiff, every joint sore, as though I hadn't used it in years. But more than the physical discomfort, there was something else, an unfamiliar sensation deep inside me. It wasn't pain, but it was a weight, a burden I couldn't quite place. I knew I had been somewhere else. That much was certain. There was no mistaking the vividness of what I had experienced, the clarity with which I had left my body and moved into that other realm. The light. The peace. The choice. How could I go back to my life, to my old way of thinking, when I had seen something so real? I had touched something true beyond the veil. And now I was supposed to simply pick up where I left off, as if nothing had changed. The nurse who had been monitoring me jumped up from her chair when she saw my eyes flicker open. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "you're awake. Thank God, we almost lost you." She checked the machines, adjusting a few dials. Where am I?" My voice was hoarse, like I hadn't spoken in days, but it felt like I had been away much longer than that. "You're in the recovery room, sir. You were out for over an hour. The doctors," she paused, searching my face. "You're lucky to be alive." I wasn't sure what to say. Lucky? I had just come from somewhere else. Somewhere better, where the pain of life, the confusion, and the chaos didn't exist. But instead of telling her that, I just nodded, grateful that the pain of the real world hadn't fully caught up with me. It was then that I realized how different things felt now. The world around me was the same, but I wasn't. The connection I had felt to that other realm, the light, the peace, those feelings hadn't left me. They were still there, faint, like a quiet echo in the background of my mind, gently nudging me to understand something I couldn't yet fully grasp. What was it that I had felt on the other side? What had I learned? And why did I feel like I had unfinished business? The questions started to swirl within me, becoming louder and more insistent with each passing minute. I had to know more. I had to understand what had happened. But how could I explain it? How could I share something so profound, so deep, when even I didn't fully understand it myself? I spent the next few days lying in the hospital bed, recovering physically from the procedure, but mentally I was a whirlwind. The world around me seemed distant, out of reach. Conversations I had with family and friends felt like they were happening on the other side of a thick glass wall. They would smile, talk about how glad they were that I had come back, how worried they'd been, but their words didn't quite connect with me. They couldn't understand. And how could they? I had experienced something they would never know. The moments in the light, the vast sense of peace, it was beyond words. I tried to explain it, once, to my sister, who visited me the second day I was awake. "Emma," I started, my voice barely above a whisper, I've seen something. Something beyond death." She looked at me, a furrow forming on her brow. "What do you mean, something beyond death? You were just on the operating table, remember? You almost didn't make it through. The doctors said they thought they lost you." I nodded slowly, then looked down at my hands, trying to find the right words. But I wasn't just unconscious. I wasn't just in a coma. I left my body. She laughed nervously, and I could see the confusion in her eyes. "Okay, what do you mean, left your body? You mean like, you were disoriented, or in and out of consciousness?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "I mean, I was outside my body. I saw my own self lying there on the table. I could hear the doctors, feel the machines beeping, but it wasn't like I was just floating or dreaming. I was, somewhere else. I paused, watching her face closely. She wasn't angry or dismissive, but I could tell she didn't understand. How could she? I was in a place of light, I continued softly. There was peace, Emma. I was offered a choice, whether to stay or return. It was so real, I can't even explain it. It wasn't like anything I've ever known. Her face softened. What happened after that? I chose to come back, I said, my voice shaking now. But I don't know why. I don't know what's waiting for me, what I'm supposed to do now. But I felt something. Something that changed me. She didn't respond immediately, just sat there quietly, processing my words. Her gaze flickered to the door as if she were unsure whether to comfort me or to find someone to explain what I was saying. I don't expect you to understand, I added quietly. I'm not sure I fully understand myself. But I'm different now. I feel like I've learned something, like there's more to this life than we see. More to death than we think. She nodded slowly, her expression a mixture of concern and uncertainty. I believe you, James. I really do. But maybe you need time to process everything. You've been through a lot. Just take it easy. And that was the thing. Everyone around me seemed to think that I had just come back from a near-death experience, as if it were a simple thing, like waking up from a nap. But it wasn't that simple. I had come back, yes. But what I had experienced, what I had felt, was something that I couldn't just shake off. It was a truth. A truth I didn't yet fully understand, but a truth all the same. The next few days passed in a blur. The doctors did their rounds, checking on my vitals, ensuring my recovery was progressing. They were thrilled to see me awake and alert, but no one asked me about the details of what had happened. No one seemed interested in anything beyond the medical side of things. And I didn't blame them. How could they understand? How could anyone understand what I had been through, what I had seen, felt, and heard? The experience was mine. And, for the first time, I realized something that scared me deeply: I was going to have to figure this out on my own. But there was one thing I knew for sure now. The questions I had about life, death, and what lay beyond, it was no longer just idle curiosity. I needed answers. And I was determined to find them. It wasn't the physical healing that troubled me, it was the emptiness I felt inside. I had survived the operation, yes, but I was not the person who had gone under the knife. I wasn't even the same person who had been in that hospital room hours ago. I wasn't sure what had changed exactly, but something in me had shifted. Deeply and irreversibly. I kept trying to tell myself that it was just the trauma of a near-death experience, that it was only natural to feel out of place for a while. But the truth was, the more I tried to cling to the old version of myself, the more it felt like a pair of shoes that no longer fit. It wasn't just the world around me that seemed different, it was me. In the days that followed my awakening, I found myself pulling away from everything I once cared about. Conversations with friends and family felt distant, like they were happening in a language I didn't understand. I couldn't bring myself to laugh at the jokes that once made me laugh until my sides ached. The weight of life, the things that used to matter so much, work, stress, petty arguments, even the fleeting things like an impending vacation or a good meal, felt meaningless. I was a stranger in my own life. That's when the guilt hit. I had come back. I had made the choice to return, to continue living, to honor the life I had, the people who loved me. But was I betraying what I had experienced? The peace I had felt in that other realm, the light, the love, it felt so real, so unshakable. How could I be expected to return to this? To live the same way? The questions plagued me. I wanted to talk about it with someone. I needed to talk about it, to share what I had seen, what I had felt. But no one seemed to understand. I'm worried about you, James, my wife, Sarah, said one night as we sat across from each other at the dinner table. You've been distant. You don't talk to me the way you used to. You don't seem like yourself. I wanted to tell her what had happened. I wanted to explain that I had seen something beyond this world, something that completely altered my view of reality. I wanted to tell her that I had touched a piece so profound that nothing in this life seemed to matter as much anymore. But the words caught in my throat. I'm fine, I lied, forcing a weak smile. It's just, everything happened so fast. I'm still trying to process it, that's all. She looked at me, concern etched across her face. She didn't believe me. She wanted to believe that I was just going through a phase, a post-surgery recovery process. But I could see the doubt in her eyes. She was beginning to question if I was hiding something. I understand, James, she said softly, reaching across the table to hold my hand. But I'm here for you, okay? If you need to talk about anything, anything at all, I'm here. Just, please don't shut me out. I nodded, but deep down, I knew that this wasn't something I could talk about with her. No one in my life would truly understand, and the longer I tried to explain, the further they would drift from me. The bond one had once shared with Sarah, my friends, even my family, they all seemed so far away. It felt like I was speaking a different language, one that no one could hear. I needed to make sense of what had happened. I needed answers. But where could I find them? It was then that I remembered the small group I had heard about, the ones who had gone through something similar. Near-death experiencers. People who had seen the other side, crossed the threshold between life and death, and come back with insights and truths that most people would dismiss as fantasy. They had to know. If anyone could help me make sense of what I had experienced, it was them. I searched online that night, pulling up forums and websites dedicated to near-death experiences, NDEs. Stories of light, of peace, of a life beyond the physical world, began to flood my screen. Some stories were eerily similar to mine, floating above the body, seeing the light, feeling the pull towards something greater than life itself. Others were vastly different, visions of loved ones, journeys through tunnels, encounters with spiritual beings, but all of them shared one common thread, an undeniable transformation. And that's when I found it, the thread I needed to pull on. A support group for people like me, people who had been to the edge of death and returned to share their experiences. I didn't think twice. I signed up for the next meeting. The night of the meeting, I was nervous. I had no idea what to expect. Would these people understand me? Would I even be able to speak about my experience without sounding like I had lost my mind? But as I walked into the room, my nerves started to settle. The people there didn't look like crazy individuals, they looked like ordinary people, just like me. Some were older, others younger, but all of them had a certain quiet intensity about them. A knowing in their eyes that spoke volumes. The group leader, an older man with kind eyes named Robert, started the meeting by explaining that this was a safe space. No judgment. No ridicule. Just people coming together to share their experiences. I want to start with one of you sharing your story, Robert said, his voice gentle. And remember, we're here to listen and understand. No one here is going to tell you that you're wrong or that it didn't happen. I felt my heart racing. But something inside me urged me to speak. I needed to share what I had gone through. For the first time since I woke up on that operating table, I felt the urge to talk. Hi, my name is James, I said, my voice shaky at first, but gaining strength as I continued. And I'm one of you. I've been to the other side, and I came back. A murmur of understanding rippled through the group, and Robert nodded, gesturing for me to continue. I wasn't ready to die. I never thought I would be in that position. But I was on the operating table, and I left my body. I went somewhere. Somewhere peaceful, somewhere full of light. It felt real. I could see everything, but I wasn't in my body. I could hear the doctors trying to bring me back, but I wasn't there anymore. I wasn't scared. I felt calm, like I was home. I paused, feeling the weight of the words I was speaking. This wasn't just a story, it was my truth. And it felt so right, so comforting to say it out loud. Robert nodded slowly, a knowing smile on his face. Go on, James. What happened next? I took a deep breath and continued. There was a voice. It told me that I had a choice, stay or return. And I chose to come back. But now everything feels different. I don't understand it. I don't know why I came back, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all of this. The room was quiet for a moment, and then one of the women sitting across from me spoke. You're not alone in that feeling, she said softly. We all feel that way. When you come back, you don't just return the same. You're changed. It's like you've seen the truth of life, and it's hard to go back to pretending everything's the same. I nodded, feeling a lump rise in my throat. It was the first time someone else had put into words exactly what I had been feeling. It's scary, I admitted. I came back to a life that feels empty. I don't know how to go on living the way I did before. It doesn't feel right anymore. Robert looked at me with a knowing gaze. That's the process, James. The return is never easy. But it's part of your journey. You've been shown something important, something that many people never get to see. And now, it's your job to find your new purpose. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but the word stuck with me. New purpose. Perhaps that was the key. My life had been reset, and I had to figure out how to live it differently. For the first time since I came back, I felt a sense of relief. I wasn't alone. I wasn't crazy. Others had walked this path before me, and they had made it through. I could too. But the road ahead wouldn't be easy. It would be a journey of rediscovery. A journey of finding a new way to live with what I had seen and felt beyond the veil. But I had to try. I had to figure out what my purpose was now. And I was determined to find it. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The days following that meeting felt like a blur. My body was healing, yes, but my mind, my soul, felt like it was constantly in flux. The feeling that I wasn't the person I had been before lingered like an invisible fog around me. Every conversation felt like a distant echo. The world I had returned to was familiar, yet strange, like stepping into an old photograph, faded and lacking the vibrancy it once held. I spent much of my time reflecting on the moments I had spent beyond the veil. The light, the sense of peace, it wasn't just a dream, a hallucination, or some product of my failing body. It was real. It had been more real than anything I had ever experienced. And in those moments, I had felt a deep, unshakable truth. I had been shown something important. But what was it? I returned to the group, week after week, seeking answers. I spoke with Robert and the others, shared fragments of what I had seen, and listened to their stories. They all spoke of similar experiences. Of love, of light, of peace, but also of a profound realization that life, in its essence, was different from what we see with our eyes. One night, after the group meeting, Robert and I sat down together for a conversation. He could sense that I was struggling with the idea of purpose after the experience. He had seen it before, people who had touched the other side and came back changed, but lost. James, he said, looking at me with a seriousness that had not been present before, what you're feeling right now, this disconnection from the world around you, it's part of the process. You've seen something that changes the very core of who you are. Most people go through life without any idea of what lies beyond, and when they face death, they do it blindly. But you. He paused, making sure I was following his words. You've seen the light. You've felt the peace. And now you have to figure out how to live in a world that feels less than what you've experienced. I nodded slowly. I was beginning to understand what he meant. I had glimpsed something greater than the confines of this life, something beyond the mundane struggles, the endless rush of daily existence. But the question remained, what was I supposed to do with this knowledge? How could I live a life that felt so disconnected from what I had felt on the other side? Robert leaned forward slightly, as if trying to offer me a secret that he had learned through his own experience. The key, he said softly, is in understanding that the other side isn't far away. It's not distant. It's here. It's within us, all around us. We carry that peace with us every day. The challenge is to remember it. The challenge is to bring that love, that peace, into this life. I stared at him, a sense of wonder and confusion rising within me. But how? How do I bring that peace into my everyday life? How do I carry the light with me when everything around me feels so small? Robert smiled, but it was a gentle smile, one that conveyed years of wisdom. It's a journey, James. It's about learning to live with the awareness that there's more than just the physical world. The light you felt, it's not something you have to earn or reach for. It's within you already. It's about opening yourself up to that truth and letting it guide your actions, your relationships, your choices. His words resonated deep within me. For so long, I had lived my life focused on external success, work, relationships, possessions. I had been chasing after something, always striving for more, for something better, for something that would make me feel complete. But now, everything felt different. I had glimpsed something beyond those pursuits, something I couldn't touch with my hands but could feel in my heart. I thought about my wife, Sarah. She had been so patient with me, so understanding, but I could tell she was growing increasingly frustrated with my distance. I had to find a way to bridge that gap, to bring the peace I had found back into our relationship, to show her the love that I now understood, something deeper than mere affection or comfort. One evening, as we sat together in our living room, I tried to explain it to her. "Sarah," I said, my voice quieter than usual, "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. About what I saw. And I want you to understand that it's changed me. Not just in the way I feel, but in the way I see everything." She looked at me, her brow furrowed slightly. "James, I know you've been struggling with all of this, but you have to let it go. You almost died. I don't know what you're going through, but you're here now. You have to live in the present." "I am living in the present," I replied gently. "But the present is different now. I can't go back to being who I was. What I saw, what I felt. It's made me see everything differently. And I need you to understand that." Her eyes softened, but there was still a hint of doubt. "I do understand, James. I just want you back. The man I married. Not someone lost in some dream." I nodded, the weight of her words heavy in my chest. I didn't want to lose her, but I also didn't want to ignore what had happened to me. I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen the truth. But now, I had to figure out how to live with that truth without alienating everyone I loved. "I'm still me, Sarah," I said quietly. "But I'm also, more than I was. And I want to share that with you. I want us to find this new life together. I need your help. I don't want to do this alone." She studied me for a moment, then reached out and took my hand. "Then let's figure it out together, okay? You don't have to do it alone." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Maybe I didn't have all the answers, and maybe I didn't fully understand what had happened to me, but I didn't have to walk this path by myself. I had people who loved me, and I had the opportunity to make this new chapter in my life something beautiful, not just for me, but for them too. But even as I sat there with Sarah, holding her hand, I knew the journey wasn't over. The truth I had seen, this peace, this love, this light, it was still with me. It was inside me, waiting to be uncovered. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it wasn't about understanding what I had seen. It was about living it. About bringing that peace into my everyday actions, into my choices, my relationships. It was a calling, not a destination. I wasn't going to find all the answers right away, but I had learned something essential. The key to living with the light was not in seeking it outside of myself, it was about opening up to it from within. And with every day, I would learn how to do that, little by little. The lessons of the other side had begun. The weeks passed, and the sense of transformation within me continued to grow, though not always in ways that were easy to understand. There were moments when I felt like I was on the verge of understanding everything, the meaning of life, of death, of the peace I had encountered. But just as quickly, the certainty would slip away, leaving me grasping at the air. Life went on around me. I returned to work, tried to maintain my daily routines, and yet everything felt different. The meetings, the phone calls, the emails, they all felt like distant echoes. The world I had once been so deeply invested in now seemed shallow, like a mere distraction from something much more profound that I had encountered on the other side. I had learned to look at things differently, but the difficulty lay in applying those lessons in a world that still operated on the same rhythms as before. I felt disconnected, both from the people around me and from the old version of myself. It was like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, forcing myself to engage in a life that no longer seemed to match the new awareness I had gained. I had been to the other side, and I had seen the truth, the love, the light, the interconnectedness of everything. And yet, here I was, trapped in the same cycle of mundane tasks, the same routines that once felt so important. At work, I found it especially difficult to focus. My colleagues noticed the change in me, though they couldn't quite place it. I had become more withdrawn, quieter, less inclined to engage in the usual office banter. They chalked it up to stress, maybe the trauma of my surgery, but there was something more profound at play. I wasn't the same person who had sat in these meetings just a few months ago. One afternoon, as I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the computer screen, I felt an overwhelming urge to step outside, to escape the sterile environment of my office, to breathe air that felt less confined. I grabbed my jacket and left, taking the elevator down to the ground floor of the building. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to get out. As I walked through the streets, the cool autumn air hit my face, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the tension in my chest begin to loosen. I was walking aimlessly, but for some reason, the movement felt right. I walked for what seemed like hours, through quiet neighborhoods, past small cafes and empty parks, lost in thought. The world felt different today. Maybe it was the crispness of the air, or maybe it was the way the golden afternoon light hit the trees, but everything seemed imbued with a sense of depth, a richness that I hadn't noticed before. That was when I spotted the bookstore. It wasn't a large, chain bookstore. It was small and quaint, tucked away in a corner of the street, with a sign that read, "The Enchanted Bookshop." A soft, inviting glow spilled from the windows, and the smell of old paper and coffee drifted out into the street. Something about it felt like an invitation. Without really thinking, I crossed the street and stepped inside. The shop was cozy, with narrow aisles and shelves stacked high with books of every kind. The walls were lined with warm, wooden shelves, and soft classical music played in the background. I could hear the murmur of the shopkeeper and a few customers talking quietly at the back. I wandered through the aisles, running my fingers along the spines of books that seemed to call to me. And then, at the very back of the store, I saw it. A small, leather-bound book sat on a shelf, its cover embossed with intricate patterns. Something about it drew me in, as if it had been waiting for me. I pulled it down, opened the cover, and found that the pages were filled with writings about life, death, and spiritual journeys. The words were profound, written with an ancient wisdom that spoke directly to the depths of my soul. It felt familiar. Like the messages I had encountered in the light. Without a second thought, I bought the book and left the store, my mind buzzing with excitement. Maybe this was the next step, this book, this wisdom, could help me make sense of the journey I had been on. I needed to know more. That night, as I sat in my living room, my hands trembling slightly, I began to read. The book spoke of the nature of the soul, of the journey we all take in this life and the next, of the eternal light that transcends death. It described the experience of crossing the threshold into the afterlife, of feeling the overwhelming presence of love that awaits every soul, and of the choices we make in life that shape our path beyond. The words seemed to resonate deep within me. The author described a truth I had already felt, one that I had glimpsed during my near-death experience. The peace, the light, the love, it was real. And it wasn't something that came after death, it was something we could experience here, now, if we were open to it. I spent hours that night reading, and for the first time since I had returned from the other side, I felt a sense of clarity. The answers were not external, they were within me. The search for meaning wasn't about seeking out some grand truth from the world outside, it was about reconnecting to the truth that already lived within my soul. I had glimpsed it once, and now it was time to integrate it fully into my life. The next day, I decided to go back to the support group. I needed to continue my journey of understanding. As I sat in the circle that evening, I felt different, lighter, more centered, as if the search had shifted from one of desperation to one of peace. I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was seeking alignment. When it was my turn to speak, I shared the book I had found and the revelations it had brought me. I spoke of the truth within, the idea that the peace I had experienced on the other side was not distant or separate from me, but something I carried within me every day. I wasn't waiting for something outside of myself to change. I was learning to change from within. Robert smiled at me, his expression gentle. "You're beginning to understand, James. The light, the love, the peace, it's not something you seek from the outside. It's always been with you. You just have to remember how to access it. That's the real journey." And for the first time since I had returned, I felt a deep sense of peace wash over me. I didn't have all the answers, but I knew I was on the right path. The journey wasn't about fixing myself or seeking a final destination, it was about remembering the truth I had once known, and learning how to live in harmony with it. The search for meaning was no longer an external quest. It was an inward journey of rediscovery. And I was ready to take the next step. Despite the newfound clarity, the days following my breakthrough were far from easy. I had learned something profound, the light, the peace, and the love I had felt on the other side were within me all along, but that didn't mean it was simple to bring that awareness into my everyday life. There was a constant tug-of-war between the peace I had glimpsed and the chaos of the world I had returned to. I woke up each morning with a sense of hope, knowing that I was on the right path, yet as soon as I left the quiet comfort of my home, the familiar pressures of the world would crash in on me. Work was demanding. The expectations of my colleagues, the endless deadlines, and the never-ending cycle of tasks, it all felt suffocating. My mind would return to the teachings in the book I had found, but the urgency of the world seemed to drown out that inner peace. I could feel the struggle inside of me, the desire to live a life in alignment with the peace I had encountered, yet the pressures of society, family, and work constantly pulling me in different directions. The world wanted me to conform, to chase success, to get things done, to be the person I had been before. But I wasn't that person anymore. It was as if I had been given a glimpse of something far greater, and now, everything around me seemed insignificant. Yet, the weight of reality, of bills, responsibilities, and obligations, was hard to ignore. The spiritual truths I had learned felt like delicate whispers in a loud and chaotic room. There were moments when I felt overwhelmed, wondering if I had made a mistake by choosing to come back. The peace I had experienced was so powerful, so complete. But I knew I had a life here, a life that was still waiting for me. I had my wife, Sarah. I had my friends, my family. I couldn't abandon them, not for the peace of the other side. But that didn't mean it was easy to reconcile the two worlds. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day at work, I came home feeling drained, both physically and emotionally. Sarah could tell something was off. She had been patient with me as I navigated this transformation, but I could sense her growing frustration. "What's wrong, James?" she asked, her voice gentle but tinged with concern. I sank into the couch, rubbing my face. I don't know. I feel like I'm being pulled in two directions. Part of me wants to live this peaceful, centered life, the way I felt after the experience. But everything around me just keeps dragging me back into the grind. I feel like I'm losing touch with what really matters. Sarah sat down beside me, her hand resting lightly on my arm. You've been through so much, James. You've seen something that most people never will. But you can't expect everything to change overnight. This is a process. You're going to struggle. But the fact that you're even aware of this, of the need for change, is a huge step. Her words were comforting, but I still felt a gnawing sense of confusion. I didn't want to let go of what I had experienced, but how could I integrate it into a world that seemed so entrenched in superficiality? The next day, I decided to take a walk. I needed to clear my mind. As I wandered through the park, I found myself staring at the trees, at the way the light filtered through the branches. The same peace I had felt when I was beyond the veil began to wash over me again. I stopped walking, taking a deep breath, and for a moment, I allowed myself to just be. I wasn't thinking about the past or the future. I was simply present, in the moment. But even then, the familiar voices of doubt began to creep in. How long can you keep this up? They whispered. How long before the weight of the world crushes your sense of peace? I closed my eyes, trying to silence the voices. I didn't have all the answers. But what I had learned on the other side was that peace didn't come from avoiding the struggles of life, it came from facing them with a different perspective. It was about integrating the light and love I had felt into every part of my being, no matter how difficult or overwhelming life became. Later that evening, I returned to the support group. It was becoming a vital part of my journey, an anchor in the storm. As I walked in, I noticed that there was a different energy in the room. People were more open, more willing to share their own struggles with the lessons they had learned. Robert, as always, was there to guide us. He looked at me with a knowing smile as I took my seat. It's good to see you again, James. I can sense that you're going through something big right now, he said, his voice calm and steady. I nodded. I don't know what to do, Robert. I feel like I've seen the truth, but it's so hard to bring it into my life. The world just keeps pushing me in different directions. I feel like I'm losing the peace I found. Robert's eyes softened. That's the struggle, James. That's the challenge we all face. You've seen the light, but the world doesn't operate on that frequency. The key is learning how to live in this world without losing touch with what you've experienced. He paused, looking around the room. This world is full of distractions, of noise, of chaos. But the light you've encountered, whether you're in the physical world or the spiritual one, it's always with you. It's about finding balance. It's not about rejecting the world around you, it's about not letting it control you. I felt a shift in my heart as his words sank in. It wasn't about escaping the world, it was about existing in it, while carrying the peace I had found within. It was a delicate balance, and I wasn't sure I had it figured out yet, but Robert was right, it wasn't about perfection. It was about practice. When it was my turn to speak, I shared what had been on my mind. I'm learning that it's not about trying to force the peace into my life. It's about allowing it to grow inside me, even when the world is chaotic. The peace is always there, waiting for me to remember it. There was a deep silence in the room, and I felt the truth of my words. The struggle within was real, but I was starting to see that it wasn't something to fight. It was something to embrace, the challenges, the chaos, the messiness of life. It was all part of the journey. The key wasn't in avoiding the struggle. It was in meeting it with the awareness of the light, the love, and the peace that was within me. I didn't have all the answers, and I still had a long way to go. But in that moment, I felt more certain than ever, I had chosen to return for a reason. And now, I had to learn how to live out that purpose, no matter how difficult it might be. The struggle wasn't a sign of failure. It was simply part of the process. It's strange, really, how something so profound, so personal, can have an impact that ripples outward into the lives of those around you. I was learning, through the difficult process of integrating my near-death experience into my everyday life, that the changes within me were affecting more than just my own journey. They were affecting my relationships, my interactions, and how I viewed the world around me. Sarah was the first person I noticed it with. She had always been supportive of me, but the distance between us had grown since my experience. I could feel her frustration with my inability to truly be present in the way she needed me to be. Yet, there was something new in her, something softer, more patient. Perhaps she was sensing the change in me and was beginning to adapt, or perhaps she was undergoing her own transformation. Regardless, I could sense her willingness to meet me where I was. One evening, we sat down together after dinner. It was quiet, just the sound of our dishes clinking in the sink, and the soft hum of the TV in the background. I knew I needed to talk to her, to express how I was feeling. But the words felt inadequate. "Sarah," I began, hesitating, "I feel like something's shifting between us, and I don't know how to explain it." She looked up at me, her brow furrowed, but there was no tension in her face. Instead, it was an openness I hadn't seen before. "What do you mean?" she asked gently. "I feel different," I said slowly. "Like I'm not the person I was before. And I know that's been hard for you, for both of us. I don't want you to feel like I'm pulling away. It's like there's this new awareness inside me, and sometimes I don't know how to bring it into our life." She set her glass down and gave me a long look, her eyes thoughtful. "I've noticed it," she said quietly. "You've been distant, and I didn't understand why. But I think I'm starting to see what's happening. You're changing. And that's scary, but it's also, kind of beautiful." I blinked in surprise. "You're not angry?" She smiled faintly. "I was at first. It's not easy to watch someone you love go through something that feels like it's pulling them away from you. But I get it now. You've seen something, James. And I can see that it's changing you, changing the way you see everything. And that's not a bad thing." Her words hung in the air between us, a weighty yet peaceful truth. I had feared that my transformation would cause a divide between us, that Sarah would never understand. But in her quiet acceptance, I found a new kind of connection, a bond that was being built on the foundation of trust, understanding, and love. Over the following weeks, our relationship deepened. We started having more conversations, not just about what I had experienced, but about how we could both live in alignment with the love and peace I had found. We shared our fears, our hopes, our dreams. And slowly, the gap that had once existed between us began to close. But it wasn't just Sarah who was feeling the ripple effect. The changes in me were beginning to impact the people around me, at work, with my friends, and even with strangers I met. There was something about the way I carried myself, the calmness I now exuded, that was drawing people in. They didn't always know why, but they were responding to it. At work, I had started to approach my tasks with a different mindset. The pressure, the stress, the constant need to prove myself, none of it seemed as important anymore. I wasn't willing to let the chaos of the office consume me. I focused on the tasks at hand, but I didn't allow them to define my worth. I made a point to be present in my interactions with colleagues, to listen with intention, and to offer support where I could. And in turn, my relationships with my coworkers began to shift. People seemed to open up more to me, confiding in me about their own struggles, their own challenges. I had become a quiet anchor in the midst of the storm, someone who exuded a sense of peace that people could lean on. One afternoon, a colleague named Lisa approached me at the coffee machine. I hadn't had many deep conversations with her in the past, but she looked at me with a mix of curiosity and hesitation. "James, can I talk to you for a second?" she asked, her voice soft. "Of course," I replied, setting my mug down. "I don't know if this is going to sound strange, but, lately, you've seemed so different. It's like you're at peace, even with everything going on. I've been going through some tough stuff, and I don't know. It feels like you might have the answers that I don't." I paused, a little taken aback. "I don't have all the answers, Lisa. But I can listen. What's been going on?" For the next 20 minutes, Lisa opened up to me about the struggles she had been facing in her personal life, her anxiety, her fear of the future, the pressure she felt to keep up appearances. She spoke with such raw vulnerability, and I realized how rare it was for someone to simply be willing to share their truth, without fear of judgment. I listened. I didn't offer advice or try to fix anything. Instead, I simply held space for her, letting her talk. And when she was done, she looked at me with a sense of relief. "Thank you for listening," she said softly. "I don't know why, but talking to you just made me feel better." I smiled, a warmth spreading through my chest. Sometimes, we just need someone to hear us. As the days went on, I began to notice more and more moments like this. I would encounter strangers on the street, and our brief exchanges would feel like something deeper than mere small talk. At the grocery store, the cashier would smile at me, her eyes lingering for just a second longer than usual, as if she could sense something in me. I didn't have to do anything but be present, and people seemed to be responding to that calm, that inner peace I was learning to hold on to. I realized something important during this time: the ripple effect wasn't just about the people around me. It was about the world itself. The more I allowed myself to embody the peace I had found, the more I noticed it reflected back to me in the world. It was like a subtle exchange of energy. The light I carried within me was not only benefiting me, it was spreading out into the world, touching others, changing things in ways I couldn't even fully comprehend. And yet, this realization also came with a responsibility. If I had seen the truth, if I had experienced the love and peace that transcended life and death, it was now my duty to live in a way that reflected that truth. It was my job to continue to embody the lessons I had learned, not just for myself, but for the world around me. I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't need to fix everything or make everything perfect. But I could continue to grow, to learn, and to spread the love and light I had found in ways that were both simple and profound. It wasn't about big gestures. It was about small, quiet acts of kindness, of being present, of listening, and of sharing love without expectation. Every moment was an opportunity to live the truth I had learned. And with each passing day, I understood more fully: the ripple effect was real, and I had the power to create waves of change in the world around me, simply by living in alignment with the peace I had discovered. The more time passed, the more I began to understand that my journey wasn't just about regaining peace or finding purpose, it was about the deeper truths that lay beneath everything. The experience I had gone through, the near-death experience, had uncovered something profound, something that was more than just a vision or fleeting revelation. It was an undeniable truth that I could no longer ignore. At first, I tried to keep this newfound awareness to myself. I thought that perhaps it was just my personal journey, and that people around me wouldn't understand if I spoke too openly about it. But as the ripple effect continued to grow, I found myself compelled to share what I had learned, to reveal the deeper truth I had touched. It wasn't easy. In a world where everything seemed so focused on material success, power, and superficial appearances, the truth I had encountered on the other side felt like a stark contrast. The world was full of distractions and noise, yet what I had learned was a simple but profound message: love is everything. That was the central truth, the core of everything. Love, pure, unconditional love, was not just something we experienced in relationships with others. It was the very fabric of the universe. It was the force that connected everything and everyone. And this love was not just a fleeting emotion. It was a constant, unchanging presence that existed beyond time and space, beyond life and death. It took me some time to process this truth, to integrate it into my life. But once I did, everything shifted. I no longer looked at the world with the same eyes. I began to see beyond the surface, beyond the distractions, to the deeper connections that existed between all things. I saw the love that connected me to my wife, to my colleagues, to strangers I passed on the street. I saw how everything in life, every experience, every interaction, was an opportunity to either express or block that love. One morning, I woke up early, before Sarah, and decided to sit in the garden for a while. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over everything. As I sat there, watching the leaves gently sway in the breeze, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I felt connected to everything, the trees, the sky, the earth beneath me. The peace I had once only glimpsed in the other realm was now something I could feel in my everyday life. But even as I sat there, basking in the quiet beauty of the morning, I knew there was more I needed to do. I had come back from the other side for a reason, and part of that reason was to share what I had learned with others. I had to help them see what I now saw, what I had always known deep down, but had never fully embraced. The truth, I realized, was that we are all connected. There is no separation between us, no division. The illusion of separation, the idea that we are individuals, isolated from one another, is just that, an illusion. In reality, we are all part of the same whole. We are all expressions of the same universal love, and our purpose on this earth is to remember that truth. This understanding began to transform my relationships in profound ways. I started seeing my colleagues not just as people I worked with, but as souls on their own journey, each struggling with their own challenges, their own fears. I started to approach everyone with more compassion, more patience, and more empathy. Instead of judging them or reacting from a place of ego, I tried to connect with them on a deeper level. One day, I found myself having a conversation with Robert, the man who had guided me through many of the early stages of my journey. We were sitting in a quiet coffee shop, and as I shared my evolving thoughts with him, he listened intently, nodding as I spoke. "You've come a long way, James," he said after a pause. "What you're describing is what many call unconditional love. It's the recognition that everything, every person, every situation, is an expression of that love." I nodded slowly. Yes, exactly. It's not just about loving others. It's about seeing the love in everything, in every experience, even the painful ones. Robert smiled. "That's the key, James. Love isn't something we give to others out of obligation or desire for approval. It's the force that connects us all. And when we align ourselves with it, life changes. Everything changes." His words resonated deeply within me. I had been living much of my life trying to find love, trying to receive it from others, trying to prove my worth. But what I had learned was that love was already there. It was already within me, and all I had to do was align with it and allow it to flow freely. I left that conversation feeling lighter, more certain of my path. I was beginning to understand that my purpose wasn't just to live for myself, but to live for the world around me. I had been given a glimpse of the bigger picture, and now it was my job to share that picture with others. Over time, I began to share my story with more people. I started speaking openly about my near-death experience, about the love and peace I had encountered, and about the deep truth that had been revealed to me. Some people were skeptical, others were curious, and still others found comfort in my words. But what surprised me most was how many people were willing to listen. They weren't just interested in the details of my experience. They wanted to know how they, too, could tap into that same love, that same peace. They wanted to know how they could find the deeper connection that I had found. And so, I began to do what I could to help them. I wasn't a teacher, not in the traditional sense. But I became a guide of sorts, sharing the wisdom I had gained and helping others navigate their own journeys. I didn't have all the answers, but I had learned one thing for certain: the answers were inside each of us. All we had to do was look within and trust the love that was already there. The more I spoke, the more I realized how many people were yearning for this truth. They were tired of the empty promises the world offered, promises of success, wealth, and fame. They wanted something real, something lasting. And I had learned that the only real thing was love. Love was the truth. It was the answer to every question, the solution to every problem, the light in the darkest of times. One night, as I sat in the quiet of my home, I realized that I had truly begun to live the message I had learned. I was no longer afraid of death, because I knew that love transcended it. I no longer sought validation from the world, because I knew I was already whole. I no longer chased after success or material possessions, because I understood that none of it mattered in the grand scheme of things. What mattered was love. What mattered was the connection we all shared. And as I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt a profound sense of peace. I knew my journey wasn't over, but I also knew that I was exactly where I was meant to be. I had learned the truth, and now, my job was to live it, to embody it in every moment, with every person, and in every experience. And that was enough. More than enough. As I journeyed further into this new life, this life shaped by the profound experiences I had gone through, I began to realize that one of the most significant gifts of my near-death experience wasn't just the revelation of love, it was the choice. The choice to live with intention, to choose how I would respond to each moment, how I would engage with others, and how I would navigate the ups and downs of life. The choice to embrace the truth of what I had seen or to retreat into the comfort of what I had always known. It wasn't always easy. The world was still filled with distractions, pressures, and expectations. And I wasn't immune to them. There were moments when I found myself slipping back into old patterns of stress, anxiety, and frustration. It would have been easy to let the external world dictate how I felt, to let the noise drown out the inner peace I had worked so hard to cultivate. But then, I would remember the other side, the vast, limitless love I had encountered when I had stepped out of my body. That love had been unconditional, without boundaries, without judgment. It had been the very essence of everything. It had been all-encompassing. And in that moment, I would choose again. I would choose to step back into that love, to align myself with it, and to bring it into every aspect of my life. I would choose life, not just the physical existence, but the deeper, truer life that existed beyond the surface. This became the most critical lesson I learned after my near-death experience. Life isn't just something that happens to you. It's a choice. Every single moment is an opportunity to choose how you respond, how you show up, how you live. And every choice has a ripple effect. It wasn't just about the big, life-altering decisions, either. It was in the small moments. The way I responded to a stressful email at work, the way I interacted with Sarah when we had a disagreement, the way I listened to someone who needed support. In each of these moments, I had the power to choose love, to choose peace, to choose understanding over judgment, kindness over frustration. But even as I embraced this new mindset, I was aware that there were still forces in the world that could pull me back into old patterns. The fear, the anxiety, the doubts, they didn't disappear just because I had glimpsed the truth. They still reared their ugly heads from time to time. I had learned, though, that it wasn't about never feeling fear or doubt. It was about choosing not to be controlled by them. It was about acknowledging those feelings but not allowing them to dictate my actions. And there were times when I wondered, was I truly living in alignment with the truth I had seen? One afternoon, I found myself alone in the garden, reflecting on my life and the choices I had made since my return from the brink of death. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lawn, and the air was cool and crisp. I felt a sense of peace as I sat there, but at the same time, I couldn't help but wonder if I had fully embraced my purpose. Was I living with the same intensity and conviction that I had on the other side? And then, I heard it. A voice, soft and gentle, but unmistakable. You can always choose again. It wasn't a voice I recognized, and it wasn't coming from anywhere external. It felt like an inner whisper, a knowing deep within me. The truth was clear, I wasn't meant to live in fear of the future or dwell on the past. I wasn't meant to hold on to regrets or wish I had done things differently. I was meant to live fully in the present moment, with love, with intention, and with the freedom to make new choices at any time. With that realization, I felt a wave of peace wash over me. It was a quiet affirmation that I was exactly where I needed to be. Life, as I had come to understand it, wasn't a straight path. It wasn't a one-time decision, nor was it an outcome set in stone. It was a series of choices that allowed me to grow, to evolve, and to become more aligned with the love and truth I had discovered. The next few weeks were a time of reflection. I was aware of how much I had changed, how much I had learned, but also how much more there was to learn. Life wasn't static, it wasn't about reaching a final destination or a perfect state of being. It was about the journey, about continuously choosing love over fear, about embodying the truth I had seen on the other side and sharing it with the world. One evening, Sarah and I sat down together, as we often did, to talk about our day. There was a comfort in these moments, a quiet intimacy that had grown between us since my experience. It wasn't the same as it had been before, when I had been distracted, preoccupied, and disconnected. Now, I was truly present, listening to her, seeing her, appreciating her in a way I hadn't before. "I've been thinking," Sarah said, breaking the silence. "About everything you've been going through. About how you've changed." I looked at her, my heart full. "I know I'm not the same person I was before, Sarah. But I'm still me. I've seen something that has changed how I see everything. And I want to share that with you, with everyone." She nodded, her eyes soft. "I know. It's like you've come back from the edge of something, and you're different. You're more aware. But I see the love in you. And I see the way it's affecting everything around us." I smiled, feeling the warmth of her words. "That's the truth, Sarah. Love. That's what it's all about. That's what I saw when I was there. And I'm choosing to live that truth now." She reached out, taking my hand in hers, and for a moment, we sat in silence, simply being together. It wasn't necessary to say anything more. The understanding between us was clear. I had chosen life, chosen love, and chosen to live with the awareness of what truly mattered. I wasn't afraid of death anymore. I had seen that death wasn't the end. It was simply another step in the journey. But I also knew that life, as it was unfolding right now, was just as precious, just as meaningful. And the choice to live in alignment with love, to live with purpose and intention, was the greatest gift I could give myself, and those I loved. In that moment, I made another choice. The choice to live each day with gratitude, with openness, and with love. The choice to continue learning, growing, and sharing the truths I had discovered. The choice to honor the gift of life, not by resisting it or fearing it, but by embracing it fully, in every moment. And that, I knew, was the most profound choice of all. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?